So yesterday we talked about um, uh, Sukkot and the happiness of Sukkot, and how the happiness of Sukkot is different from the rest of the year, and that is symbolized by the water pouring ceremony. That water pouring ceremony, the mitzvah of pouring water on this funnel that was in the corner of the altar in the Holy Temple. So every day there were two funnels. One, they poured wine in every day at one stage of the prayer of the service, the daily service. They poured wine, and the other one they poured water. And every day they poured wine, but water they only poured on the days of Sukkot. And wine is clearly stated in the Torah many, many times that there's a wine offering, nesach yayin, nesach yayin, nesach yayin, it's called. So they have to pour wine, and they have to offer up wine. And the way they offered it up, like I said, was to pour it into this funnel, which was on the corner of the altar. And right next to that corner, that funnel, was another funnel. The funnel for the wine had a big opening, and the water had a small opening. And on Sukkot, they would pour the wine like they did every day, but together with it, they would pour the water. And they would go down at the same time. They would go down to a place under the ground, way down deep. Okay, so what does this got to do with anything? So the Rebbe points out that to be happy is an essential aspect of life, to be happy. And especially it's an essential because happiness enables us to meet the difficulties of life and to do our job as human beings. We have a job, really? Human beings have a job this year. You're a human being, you're already hired. What type of a job do we have? So the job of every human being is to improve the world according to the Torah. And of the Jewish people, it's to bring blessing to the world according to the Torah. One means that the world should be an orderly place according to the Torah, an orderly, inhabitable, positive, peaceful, productive place. But the Jews are here so the world should be a godly place. In other words, everyone should see and feel that God is creating us all the time, and he's creating us for a purpose. So every human being is important, and every human being is being created by God, the creator of the universe. And this creator of the universe gave us the Torah so that we should do what he wants, but that should make us happy. Right? A person that lands like a good job that's really fit to his personality, as he's happy. You know, you give a person on the street doesn't have any money, doesn't have a home, you give him money in a house, he's happy. But if after you give him money in a home, you also give him a job that he likes, a job that he can feel productive, then he can get married, he can have children, he can raise a family, he's got responsibility, that makes him even happier. Of course, you have to have the basic needs. So the Jewish people, they have to have two types of happiness. One type of happiness is all year, and that's symbolized by the commandment of pouring wine on the altar, because the altar was like the center place, the midpoint upon which the axle upon which everything revolves, the Holy Temple. And now we don't have a Holy Temple. We still have the wall is still there, but the place though we still pray facing the Holy Temple to remind us that that's the center point that everything revolves around. So happiness comes from the Holy Temple. What was in the Holy Temple? There were two things in the Holy Temple. There was the tablets, and there was the altar. The tablets are what God gives to us, and the tablets are still there. They're just hidden down in a deep place where King Solomon made when he knew that there was going to be troubles. When King Solomon built the temple, so he built this place way down to hide the tablets if trouble ever came. And there was the altar, which the place of the altar is not exactly known today, but nevertheless, there's the altar. So the altar in the Holy Temple was where all the service of God was. So that the tablets is sort of what God does for us, and the altar was what we do for God. Well, a lot of it didn't make any sense, right? Doing the sacrifices, that makes no sense. But that's what they did on the altar, because God doesn't make any sense. God, He creates the whole world that makes sense. So this is serving it. Okay, so on Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot, that's the time of special happiness. And it's the time when not only do they pour water, but they also wine, but they also pour water. Okay, what is so happy about water? So we explained before, and we're going to explain it again here. This is the end of a different essay. The end of the previous essay, it was a little bit too Kabbalistic for our class, for a half an hour class. I'd have to explain like every word and how every word relates to every other word. And okay, here we're talking about more sort of down to earth things. So there's one type of happiness is like wine. Wine is in Kabbalistic terms is called from bina. Bina means understanding. In other words, you can understand, you think, you use your mind, you think about how great God is, how good God is, how close God is, how wonderful God is, that God is, just that God is a creator, that there is such a thing as a creator. And you start to think about this, and that God gives us responsibility and all these wonderful things, and that gives you happiness. And that commandment of pouring wine is explicitly written in the Torah. And then there's the commandment of pouring water, which is not explicitly written in the Torah at all. It's not explicit. And even how it's implicitly written in the Torah, you have to really, twist your mind in order to find it. Because it's like extra letters at the ends of certain words. But that was given to Moses. How do we even know that there is such a thing? Because that was given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. So if you remember, we learned in the last Maimon, what we've been learning for the last 2 days, that the Torah is the source of happiness, because the Torah is the reason why we're here. And those things which are clearly stated in the Torah, that we can sort of understand. That's Bina. That's being revealed. That's revealed. But then there's something even deeper. There's the ideas of the Torah, the source of the letters of the Torah. It's called the Sofer, the one who wrote the Torah. And that comes from Chachma. That's a deeper type of reality, a deeper type of joy that's not like wine. It's only represented by water. It's pure. And that's what we're going to learn about here. Okay? That's what we're going to learn here. So he says, the whole year there was also fire on the altar. There was fire on the altar, and that was serving God. That's the rest of the year. There was fire. They burnt up the offerings, right? But there's another level, right? There's another level, Gadola, which is even greater, and this is the level of water. Shemenaschim, that they pour al gabi on the top of the altar. Let me make this a little bit bigger over here. Make it. 1 second. All right, why not? Because what does water do? What does water do? Shamayim, water, marvim tzimaon. It satisfies thirst. It satisfies thirst, Thirst. Haba, which comes from the fire. There was the fire on the altar. A person gets warm. The liquid evaporates. And so you have to put water to come down. Like it says, like it says, anyone who is thirsty, come to water. But Gam also, but Bechinas Umadregas Mayim, there's also a level in water, there is also a lot of different levels, each one above the other. Like it says, Ata Reis Ladas Ki Hashem Hu Elokim. Like it says, you have been shown to know that God is your God. Right? In the we just read it in Devorim. That God is your God. Bashamayim, from the, you have been shown. This is another place where God appeared on Mount Sinai, whatever that means. Everybody saw there was a creator. Like they went to the Holy Temple and they saw, but this is even deeper. Ki Hashem Hu Elokim, that God is God in the heavens and the earth. Ein od milvado, there's nothing except for Him. Hariya b'riya chushis, everyone on Mount Sinai, they saw clearly. This is like water. God came down. Hu bechinas bittul b'metzius, that they were totally, they say, negated. Everybody really felt that they're being created. They're just creations. Any second guy could just, pull out the plug or turn off the lights or whatever, and that's it. You're gone. You're just, all you are is just some sort of flow of godliness. That's who we are. And everyone saw this, Bariya, seeing. So that, if we remember before, we said that Bina is understanding. That's like hearing. That brings one type of happiness. But on Mount Sinai, it was seeing. That's like water. Water is clear. It goes right through. That's seeing God. This level is called water. Makarer, because it's calm. It cools off a machabeh and puts out the heat of the fire. Why? Because as soon as you become totally negated, legamri, alav, harimimelo, automatically, ume'elav, mitkarer choma eish. The Rebbe will give an example. But I'll give you an example. I remember in the 60s, there were these rock and roll singers that the girls especially were crazy. They would be in this and they would scream and yell on the stage. Right? But as soon as they came close to them, let's say one of the, they would point to somebody, some girl in the States, come up and they would give her a memento or something like that, this guitar pick. They would just be, they couldn't speak. They were so, I can't believe I'm so close to the big, singer, whoever the person is. But when they're far away, they're screaming and yelling. It's not a very holy example, but the Rebbe will give a better example than mine. But this is one that I've seen. You're going to see it. Right? They're all screaming and yelling. As soon as they come close, they don't believe it. It says that's the fire is put out by water. In other words, from far away, everybody's excited. But as soon as the person achieves what they want, this amazing thing, so then the person becomes what's called bittul, becomes totally surrendered. For instance, avas a ben, like for instance, the love of a son to his father. When he wants to come close to him, he's a little bit far away. Azai, then the love can be seen revealed. He cries, "Daddy, Daddy." And he cries out, "Daddy, Daddy, I want you." But here we go. That's like fire. That's like fire. That's like from being far away. Bigger. Which is not the case, when he's right next to his father, then his heart, which is paved with love, but you don't see it. It's not revealed outside of his heart. The son is just hugging his father, he's hugging. Therefore, nikra bechinas mind. That's called water. It cools off. This fire shouldn't be revealed out. It's hidden inside of the heart. Just like we have in our prayers, our daily prayers, we have what's called the Shmona Esrei prayer. It's called the standing prayer. 3 times a day, it's prayed quietly. B'chashai, silent. Ki mafsik, ki, the pasuk, it says, Pesuki de Zimra, I'm sorry. In Pesuki de Zimra, if you've ever looked at a Jewish prayer book, so it starts off with the praises, Psalms of King David. And then it goes on to the prayers written by the men of the Great Assembly. the men of the Great Assembly, which that was like, 500 years, something like that, after King David, 400, 500, in the beginning of the Second Temple. So they also wrote the blessings before Shema, etc. All these are praises of God to arouse your love, like flaming fire, the osoref, to be burning up a machaleh, at the ishim, to burn up the other types of fire, which are eish zora. Right? You have love of money, you have love of power, you have love of laziness, whatever you have love, as the thinking about God and singing the praises that King David wrote and the men of the Great Assembly wrote. When you really think about it, so that gives you a fire, a desire for God that takes away all of your other desires. All of your other desires become like cartoons before the main feature. They become like cheap, like pennies in the face of $100 bills. That's fire. When you think about the praises of King David, then you start to feel the fire that King David felt for the Creator, and the same thing, the fire that the men of the Great Assembly, what they felt for God. You feel the fire, the desire, but that's like from far away. Harihuka ilu, it's like he's far away from the king. Masha came, but tefillah, it's not the case when you get to the prayer, the standing prayer. It's 19 blessings. Sha'ari hu ilu, it's like you're standing in front of the king yourself. Like you're standing there, when your person stands in front of the king, he's not yelling, wow, I'm so happy I'm standing in front of the king. He's just, yes, your majesty, no, your majesty. That's what we say. We say in the standing prayer, we say 19 times, we say, Baruch, blessed, blessed, blessed are you, blessed. What does it mean, Baruch? We're drawing down like water. We're drawing down godliness. We're drawing down God's oneness below so that it should be revealed here. So that it should be revealed here, and that we should be like a son who is far away but is now close to his father, totally negated to the king. Similarly, tikno modim, I mean, there's ample examples. Most of them are not good examples, from bad people, but people that are leaders were leaders, and these people were like, leaders that aroused the people, and they aroused the people because they appealed to their nature. Who are we really? We are really, whatever. So it appealed to their nature, their race, their religion, there's something that they already have an affinity to, and there's one person stood up to be a leader. And this person was a great leader. Everybody was crazy. Unfortunately, a lot of them in the last few decades have been not such good people. But nevertheless, they aroused people. And when they would go through the streets, everybody was just crazy, right? They would go crazy. But anyone would just really be close to the person. I don't believe it. I'm right next to the great, whoever it is, the king. That's the idea of prayer. There's no better leader than God. He creates the whole world, he creates us, and he's telling us what's good for us. Of course, he also gives us the opportunity to refuse. That's what God wants, so that we should choose from our own free will to serve him. But when we do choose from our own free will to serve him, then we start to realize how infinitely far away God is from us. That he creates the angels, he creates everything. He created the world, was there before the world existed. What does that mean? It's just totally incomprehensible to us. And that I am being created by God, you feel God is so far away. But once you start to appreciate a little bit more, then suddenly realize, hey, God is creating me. I'm standing right now in the presence of God. They say that they see the example that once somebody did a favor for the king or saved the king's son or something like that. And the king said, I'll give you anything you want. What do you want? Anything you want. You want money, you want this. The person said, listen, I have a house, I got a place to live. I got enough money, everybody could use more. What I would really like is to be able to come into the king. I love the king so much. Just to come into the king every day or whenever I want to. And the door will be open to me for 1 minute, 3 minutes, just to be with the just to talk to the king. You don't even have to answer. I love the king so much. You're just such a wonderful, amazing person. That's what I want. I don't want money. I don't want power. I don't want fame. All I want to do is just be in the presence of the king for a couple of minutes every day. That's good enough for me. That's the thing of prayer. The thing of prayer is that we're just in face of the king. And God writes, listen, you have to ask for things. You're in the world in order to fix the world up. Right? You're not here just for yourself. Ask me. Right? You noticed anything in the world that needs to be fixed up? Now is the time to ask. 3 times a day we can go into the king and we talk. That's prayer. We're in the king. So when we're standing, we're quiet because we appreciate the king so much. We've said all these praises of King David and of the men of the great assembly. So that's bittul. So similarly, we have modim and achtulach in the prayers itself, in the standing prayer itself. There's what's called modim and achtulach. Modim means total surrender to God. Bowing down. And therefore, the whole prayer of Shemon Esrei is quiet, and that's like water. Now, this is a totally different type of happiness. If the child wants to see his father and he's one with his father, he's incredibly happy, but he's not screaming anymore. When he sees his father from it's Daddy, there it is, Daddy, why have I been waiting for you? Why? But when he's there, he's sunk in the heart of man, Kolium the whole day, Shalo Yamutu, Yamut, that it should not. Okay, that's when we pray. We're going into the king. But what about having it all day? Why should we have it all day? Because we're always in the presence of God. God is creating us all the time. He's not just creating us when we're doing, Jewish things. As Tzorech Adam L'sit Eitzos, a person has to take advice to himself. Kihine, because behold, Anuroim, we can see clearly, Sha'achra Tafila, after you finish praying, Shmona Esrei, after you finish praying the standing prayer, you're just like you were in the beginning. You can get angry at people, you get troubled, you get depressed, it's whatever. How can you keep this feeling of truth, of being close to the king the whole day? It's the truth is asik Torah, learning the Torah. God gave the Torah not just on Mount Sinai, and not just in the Holy of Holies. He gave the Torah to us. It's the same Torah that was on Mount Sinai, unchanging from the time it was given. In fact, it even says that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they were able to perceive the Torah even before it was given. They did the commandments, but it was different after it was given. Then God really appeared. And this is by means of learning the Torah and doing the commandments and its laws. Even though that they're malubashim b'davrin gashmim, even though that the Torah is dealing with only physical things, you put on physical tefillin on your head, and you keep these physical. So it seems to be just like rituals, just a religion like every other religion. Every religion has their rituals. Even though the clothing, the kamoba in Yanisaroim, for instance, there's all the agricultural laws, moed, all the holiday laws, very exact laws about what a shofar is and what lulav is and an etrog, what's a sukkah. Has to be exact specifications. Even though it seemed to be just, religious rituals at best, they're just these physical things. They don't even make any sense, and they have to be so exact. It says, nevertheless, the fact is, they're ultimately unified and clinging to God, like it says in another place. But a person has to surrender himself love and to be included in God's oneness, to be a place for God's unity, and to give himself totally away for God. That's the Holy Temple. What was the Holy Temple? It was a building. It was just a building, it was just a piece of real estate. It's true that the other religions try to make a land grab or whatever, and the Jews really can't figure out why it's so precious to them. I remember there was one fellow in one of the prime ministers, probably the worst prime minister that there was ever in the history of Israel. He's now leading all the left, to go against. That doesn't make any difference, his name. So he gave away everything to the Arabs. Everything they wanted, he gave away to them. But he refused to give away the Western Wall. And they said, we want the Western Wall. He said, no, I'm not going to give it away. And they said, okay, so we're not going to have peace. And then afterwards he said, I don't know why didn't I give away the Western Wall? I mean, the whole thing just meant nothing to him. Absolutely nothing. And if you think about it, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just a wall. What's the big deal? It has a historical significance that's more important than the human lives. We can placate our enemies and make friends with them, of course, which is ridiculous. No matter how much you give them, it's not going to placate them. But nevertheless, that's what was promised. And afterwards, he said, well, I could have had peace. I would have gone down in history as the man who made peace. I just couldn't give him those bricks. That wall, I can't figure out why, right? All it is just a physical thing. It's just a physical wall. There's walls all over the place. I'm sure he would be willing to give away the walls of Caesarea. What is it? Caesarea? Are they from? There's also big walls over there, the aqueducts and things like that. He would give them away, no problem. Right? This they couldn't give away. Couldn't give away the wall. This is why not? Because physical things that were devoted to God according to God's specifications is they're holy, even though it's just a physical thing. And in this physical thing, it brings about what's called bittul, surrender. Right? Surrender. Like we see this prime minister that was totally, not religious, anti-religious, whatever you want to call it. And he was willing to give back all of Jerusalem, the temple and everything, right? The temple. He couldn't give back the wall. Why couldn't he give back the wall? Because his whole personality was negated. That's bittul. Suddenly his whole personality, that he was, right? He ran on the platform. He was a normal human being. He wasn't a Jew. He wasn't this. He was just a person or whatever. And all of a sudden, the man went out of his mind. What happened? That's called bittul. Tefillah Shmona Esrei, and the Shmona Esrei should be set all of the days, lo timot lenetzach kol yom, the whole entire day. Why? Because you learn Torah. And the Torah, when you have to remember that the Torah comes from God. And that doesn't make any sense. So even the ideas of the Torah don't really make any sense because they come from God. That's the day of Shmini Atzeres, the Yelachem, Sheti Yelachem Atzeres, the Kalita, the Bechinas Mayim. Then on the 8th day of Shmona Esrei, it's called the gathering day. This is when all the water, this inner deep pleasure of unity with the Creator, this is Atzeret, is gathered in. The Yitfos B'tochachem, inside of you, that it shouldn't be, it shouldn't go away. That's the Torah. A person can, after he finishes praying, he can be just like he was in the beginning. But by means of what's called the 8th day of Sukkot, number 8, which this is the level of Bina, Liba, understanding. It comes, this idea of Chachma, which is the Torah, it comes into your heart. That's the number 8. There's 7 emotions, right? It starts off, let's say, from the bottom. There's Malchut, and then there's Yesod, and then there's 5 more, right? Netzach, and Hod, and Tiferet, and Chesed, and Gevura. So there's 7, and above them is the number 8. That's the level of Bina. Bina is called the heart. That your heart, which usually depends on understanding, but when you learn the Torah, it puts inside of the Torah the godliness, the water of the Torah. The Torah is like water, comes from above to below. That's what happened on Mount Sinai. Water, everyone was just quiet. But omek nekudas alev, in the essence of the heart. Hainu lefisha tidgala atik, because it's revealed this level of atik, Kabbalistic level, which is the inner level of what's called God's crown. In Bina, the world of pleasure. Atik is pleasure. So Atik is pleasure. Pleasure means that what your essence is. Lochen, therefore, al yedei zeh, by means of this is drawn down. There should be atzeres v'klita to this water. This is what we said is ava b'tainugim, which is a love of a delight love, that you get pleasure in God. Kamashal, just like a son when he's right next to his father. So a son, when he's not next to his father, right? He's not next to his father. So he's looking around, I want my father, he's got a picture of his father all the time. And someone comes over to him and says, excuse me, you want to see your father? Your father sent me. Your father sent me to get you. He told me to, he sent this piece of chocolate. And he sent me, the guy's lying. It's not so. Really? My father told you? He says, yeah. Here's a picture of your father, right? He did a little homework, this guy. So when a child is far away from his father, so he can be tricked. Are you sure this is the way to my father? Right? He can be tricked into believing. I mean, I think unfortunately this is happening a lot in the world. They're starting to reveal it. Like the people say, I was sent by your father, I was sent. And that's what's going on over here. Every Jew wants to be close to his father. We're called sons of God. Every Jew is a son of God. Every Jew deep inside wants to be, but we're far away. We're far. So if you're far away, you can be easily deceived. And how are you deceived? By the world. By the world. In this case, we pray, let's say the standing prayer, and we're thinking about God, and we're thinking about the greatness of God, the oneness of God, and all these things. And then sometimes in the middle of the Shemona Esrei prayer, you can suddenly feel, wow, this is really true. What I'm saying, God really exists, it really exists. And God really wants me to fix up the world. And he wants me to, but then after you finish, you don't have this feeling. It's like you're far away again. And when you're far away, you can be easily deceived. So what's the war really over here? The war is over pleasure. The little child, he feels a little bit sort of uncertain. Someone comes, you want to see your father? Oh yeah, I really love my father. You have pleasure when you see your father. Oh, and I'm with my father. I just have tremendous, pleasure, to be with my father. Says, okay, come, I'll take you to your father. This is right. Having a good time? Yeah, we're going to see your father soon. And even worse, the world says, this is your father. This is money. That's who your father is, right? Worshipping idols. That's who your father is. Pleasures, other pleasures, power, all the weird things in the world that people feel good. It says that's pleasure. But when the pleasure of being with your father negates all the other pleasures. Like a pleasure, okay, listen, the Rebbe is taking for granted something with which psychology and psychiatry especially beginning with Freud and all of his very sick pupils, that there's nothing genuine. The only one that came, I mean, I know I'm really blowing this fellow's trumpet a lot, but the only one that really got the thing right was Professor Viktor Frankl. The Rebbe once said to someone that Freud and all those others dug deep into the recesses of the soul of man, and all they found was, how do you say, the excrement and evil, and Frankl found diamonds. Frankl found diamonds. So all these people, what do they mean? What are the diamonds? Genuineness, genuine love, not thinking about yourself, genuine selflessness, to do things for the sake of the truth. And that we have access to the truth. And that's what's called meaning. That's what he says. So here, it's the same thing. All those people, all those psychiatrists, psychologists, they say nothing is genuine. So this doesn't mean anything. What are we talking about? A son by his father. He loves his father. He only loves himself. But the Rebbe is taking for granted that it's not so. It's not so. It's a big, terrible, evil, destructive lie. There is such a thing as genuine love. And children genuinely love their parents. It's a genuine, unexplainable love that they have. Right nowadays, the modern day society is trying to do away with family and society and anything genuine with children. But all these movements of this woke movements is just not to have children anymore. No more children. And if you do have children, so they don't get married, they change their whatever it is, power of giving birth. But the fact of the matter is that's a lie. The fact of the matter is there are things which are above our understanding. And one of them is the love of a child to his parents. He uses the example of a son to his father. So when we're close to then our father is God. And this is really, to a certain degree, everyone's father is God. Not the same thing as the Jews, but God fathers the whole entire world. In other words, he's creating the whole entire world all the time. So to that degree, but the Jews have this deeper connection with God, which enables them and forces them to advertise to the whole world how much God loves them, that he's creating them. So when the son is close to his father, that's the idea of Shmini Atzeret. That's what Sha'avta Mayim Basasim in Mayim Yeshua, from the waters of salvation. Ki Bechinas Mayim, this level of water has to be, and it has to be not just regular water in a river, but from the Mayim, from the source of water, from the wellspring. Like it says, Oti azvu, you have left me, said God. One of the prophets says, you have left me. Makor mayim chayim, I am the source of living water. Hainu al derech mashal, like for instance, mamakor and novea, water that flows up from below the earth. The ainu near, and you cannot see it except nivia. All you can see is the flow that comes out, which is not the case. The mokar, where does this water come from? Amok, it's very, very deep. Who can find it? Who can find it? 1 second. Where does this go up to? It goes up to here. No. Oh, the kach also has a person has to be better to the tata and arousal from below, just like the water of a wells of a spring flows through the earth from below to above. Also, we have to reveal this love from below to above. Also, lachfor, and we have to dig the omak mind deep into our soul. The mashu novea, where is the source of this love? Where's the source of our life? Amok, deep, mitachat la'afar, under the earth. Namely, you should be humble before everyone. And in this humility, what is left if you're humble in front of everybody? You don't compare yourself to anyone. You're humble to everyone. What's left? The true you. Something that no one can take away from you. Your life. And also to deep yourself into this life. With your mind, and when you learn the Torah and its laws, to think where they come from. That this is the level of God's upper wisdom. Reshit, the beginning of everything. That there should be a source of this upper water of God. So we have our water, source of our wellspring, which is our soul. And God, we can connect the wellspring of God, which is the Torah. Ulamata, that's really the ideas of Chassidut that we're learning. The Yordu and Ishtalshal, that comes down very below to the level of the Tachat or under the earth. In Yanim Gashmi, physical things, we deal with physical things, and from there, from the water, it flows upwards. Yeshua, the well springs of salvation. Two of them, two well springs. Shem Beit Bechin is two levels in the soul. That we said, my soul should be like dirt to everyone. Nafshi kafar l'chaltiyah. We say it in the end of our prayers every day. Ubechin is the Torah. That's the level of there's two levels: the depth of the soul and the depth of the Torah. Both of them are in the earth. The Torah is in the earth in physical things, and our soul is in the earth in our body. And that's what makes it called living waters. Because living waters of a wellspring have to push up through the dirt. The water which is on the face of the earth, it is not. It's not called living water. Like even it's known, it's not called living water. 1 second, that's it. I think that's the end of this. Yeah, water that's on the face of the earth, that's not called living water. But the water that pushes up through the physical, that's called living water. So if you have any troubles in life, you have difficulties in life, as you should look at them like they are just the earth. And everybody has difficulties in life. In fact, just life itself is a difficulty. That God put us in the world, we already got problems. So to push up through the dirt, that's what makes living water. And this is especially by learning the Torah. The Torah is also called afar. It's also called earth. Namely, earth, just like the grains of earth, you can't count it. Also, the ideas of the Torah cannot be, and we said before, remember the Torah, that comes from the author of the Torah, that's the Sofer. So that's the whole idea of linking together Chachma, which is the source of all being, together with Bina, with our understanding of everything. And that brings deep, deep inner pleasure, which that's Sukkot, into the happiness that has to be of all the year. So that's the novelty of the holiday of Sukkot. Every day of the year we have to be happy. That's signified by the pouring of the wine on the altar every day. But on Sukkot, we feel the pleasure, we feel the source of this understanding of God, which is represented by wine. the source of it, the water, the total surrender to the Creator, the connecting to the source of our soul, the source of the wellspring, and the source of the wisdom of the Torah. That's God's wellspring. And that's the whole idea of Shmini Atzeret, the holiday of the gathering, Sukkot in general, the holiday of Sukkot in general, they pour the water, and Shmini Atzeret, it's all gathered together into our soul so that we can use it and utilize it through the Torah all the days of the year. Okay, now let us learn the Sikh of the Rebbe.